If you're a parent, teacher, or school leader, and you're sick and tired of the frustration, anger, and unfair treatment of children at high risk in our public schools, then perhaps it's time for all of us to do something about it. In this podcast, Dr. Amitra Berry brings you tips, tools, strategies, and tactics to build successful solutions while touching, moving, and inspiring all of us to transform our schools so that every child thrives. Here's your host, Dr. Berry.
Welcome back, Equity Warriors. Thanks for tuning in to this special Memorial Day episode here on the 3E podcast. And I want to start by saying that this is an episode that is also appropriate for your children as young as 8 to listen to. So if you're listening in the car on your way to or from work, bookmark the episode so you can make sure to share it with the kids when you get home. If you're already at home and the kids are there, hey, press pause, call them in to listen with you. If they're not there, again, bookmark this, listen to it together again later on, and then share it with your friends and family that may not be subscribers, but that may have children who can learn from today's special on Memorial Day. Memorial Day. It's a time not just for a long weekend, which we all appreciate, but it's a time where we should honor and reflect on the sacrifices that have been made by those who have served in the U.S. Armed Forces. I want to talk about the history and significance of Memorial Day today, but I want to do it with a special emphasis on the Black American soldiers whose contributions are often overlooked in the narrative of American military history. And as books are banned and DEI is demonized, it's important for us, and especially for our children, to know the real history, hard history, not the version that's necessarily taught in your school books, and certainly not about the flags and T-shirts and paraphernalia that's sold to have fun on this day. But the decoration is important. You see, Memorial Day first began as Decoration Day at the end or shortly after the end of America's Civil War. The Civil War, in which an estimated 180,000 Black American soldiers fought for the Union Army, the United States, but they also fought for their freedom from chattel slavery. That was in May of 1865 in Charleston, South Carolina, where a group of freed slaves got together to honor the Union soldiers, many of whom were Black, who had died in horrific conditions in a Confederate prison camp there. These freed men and women cleaned up the burial site, and then they decorated it with flowers, and they gave proper recognition to the soldiers who had died with a parade, maybe a parade like one you'll go to today. 3 years later, after the tradition of Decoration Day had been carried on by Black Americans in the South, there's a man by the name of General John Logan. He was the leader of a Civil War veterans organization in the North. And so he officially called for a nationwide day of remembrance on May 30th. Now that day, that first nationwide remembrance was marked with commemorations, and there was one where General James Garfield, who was a radical abolitionist, who in his time in Congress fought for an end to America's enslavement of Black Africans. He also fought for their rights to after or during Reconstruction, and he later became, you might have already guessed it, our 20th president. James Garfield spoke at Arlington National Cemetery. And just in case you didn't know, Arlington National Cemetery was part of a plantation that was owned by the Confederate General Robert E. Lee, a plantation that was worked by enslaved Black people. And yes, Black soldiers were permitted burial at Arlington, even though the military itself was still segregated, and Black officers could only command or be in charge of Black troops. At Arlington, the attendees there decorated the graves of more than 20,000 soldiers. Some of those soldiers served the Union Army, and some served the Confederate Army. Now, the Union Army was the United States Army. The Confederate Army, well, They were the traitors. And when they included the Confederate graves, they did it as a gesture of reconciliation. But for many Black Americans, that decorating of Confederate graves was a reminder that they were still struggling for recognition and equal rights, not just in the military, but throughout the rest of their lives. Today, we still see some of that. We still see that as we are having schools take away the names of Confederates, as we see statues of Confederate soldiers and leaders being removed. Now, over the decades since 1865, Decoration Day has transitioned into what we now call Memorial Day. It became a federal holiday officially in 1971, and it was shifted to the last Monday in May to create a 3-day weekend because, we kind of like our holidays. But in doing that, we have to wonder, or we have to pay attention and be mindful to the real reason, the meaning for Memorial Day, and particularly the contributions of soldiers of color from the Revolutionary War to the present. The stories of people who are often lost as we barbecue and buy stuff on sale. Now, today where you are, maybe Memorial Day is a ceremony and you have a parade, and it may include Black, African American veterans groups, Latino American veteran groups, Asian American veteran groups, Native or Indigenous American groups, and highlighting the valor and sacrifices of our soldiers of color. Observances like these are important. They're a vital reminder of what we often do not appreciate in service of America. So we should not only reflect on the price of peace and freedom, but we should acknowledge and elevate the stories of soldiers of color who have fought bravely in the face of extraordinarily challenges, both abroad and at home. So as we commemorate this Memorial Day, remember the purpose. Honor not just the generic image of an American soldier, but the Black soldier, Native American soldier, Latino, Asian American soldiers who have defended this country while still fighting for their rights and dignity as citizens of this country. And some soldiers who have yet to gain citizenship. Remember their sacrifices and their stories because they're important to our understanding the true cost of freedom and this continuing journey towards justice and equality. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope you have gathered the children around you, or you plan to share this episode with them and give them just a little bit of history. And then as you reflect on today, think about the deep roots and diverse histories that this day commemorates. Stay engaged, stay informed, learn from our true history, and then join me again next week. Connect with me on social. You know where to find the links down below. And don't worry about the things you cannot change. Change the things you can no longer accept. I'll see you next time.
That's it for today's episode of the 3E Podcast. Head over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. One lucky listener every single week that posts a review on iTunes will win a chance in a grand prize drawing to win a $25,000 value private VIP day with Dr. Berry herself. Be sure to head over to 3epodcast.com and pick up a free copy of Dr. Berry's gift. Then join us on the next episode.